Hello, hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be diving in today with you all about creativity and blocks. And so, if you've ever been stuck with beginning, if you've ever dealt with procrastination, if you've ever been unsure what to do with your creativity next, or if you've also been wanting to have a more consistent daily creativity practice and you want it to be simple, then today I'm going to be diving into real questions that have been submitted from my Mindful Creative Muse community, and I'll be answering any questions live if they come through as well. So, this topic is near and dear to my heart because I feel like if you're a creative, you're no stranger to having these moments where you want to create something and you feel unsure, you have self doubt, you feel blocked or stuck. You feel overwhelmed, too busy, like you're not good enough. There's all of these reasons that can stop us from creating and really from playing, which is something that I love seeing children in their creative element because there's not as many of these blocks. So if you're here watching live or the replay, please feel free to comment any questions. And I'm going to dive into the couple of questions. I have about 4 that were submitted ahead of time as well. I have a handful of tips and tricks as well as some giveaways on this call. So this first question is coming from Louisa. And you can comment if you relate to this. She says, I believe I need to develop discipline. Part of what's in the way is the internal critic, as you put it. And she said, whatever I do, I don't like, or to be more accurate, I'm not able to connect with. I think that's so key. And she says another part, which I think it might be easier to tackle, is that I don't know what to draw, paint, or make art out of. So we'll talk about that. I'll share some ideas and tips for you. And she says, I will stop here for now, but I'd be happy to receive any wisdom you might have on how to become unstuck and make something stick. So best wishes, and thank you so much for being there for people like me who feel a little lost. So I just so deeply appreciate this question because it is definitely something all of us as creatives have experienced at some point. So I just want to say, Louisa, you're not alone. And if you relate to this, we're all in it together. So one question I would love to pose is that what if the reason that you feel stuck isn't because you're not creative or you don't have creative ideas, but instead because you care deeply? And so when you have something that we care really deeply about, we sometimes can hold it really tenderly and preciously, and we want things to be perfect or to turn out a particular way. And it can stop us from starting. So I want to share about 4 or 5 different tips around this. And then also talk about how do we make our creative practice stick? How can we have it be so simple that that we can't not begin, or so simple that we can't step into that practice? So I'll share some ideas around that. And I also want to say that I believe Louisa is absolutely right. What she's talking about is definitely part of that part of ourselves that is our inner critic that is trying to keep us safe. I talk about this all the time in my online classes and on my live calls because it's such a common human part of our experience. So she talks about a few different things: not knowing what to create, feeling like it won't be good enough, and then not having a practice that is sticking. So one thing that I recommend first and foremost, that I've found this to be so true for myself and for people I work with, is to have it be really simple. So that could be that you might want to experiment with literally 5-minute creative practices or rituals. I very often will set a timer on my phone, and I'll do it for 1, 2, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, really the shortest amount of time that will get me starting, but not so long that then I feel like, oh, I don't have 30 minutes or an hour to begin. And I think the great part about this particular idea or tip that is really kind of sneaky is that it can help to ease our inner critic. And then majority of the time when I do that, I tend to then create for like 30 minutes or for an hour. It depends how much time that I have, but it's very often that I drop into more of that flow state, and that I feel much more comfortable. So try a 5-minute creative ritual. She talks about not knowing what to create. And so I wanted to, and there's another question later, so I'll dive more into this. So you have the timer, but then if you're unsure what to create, I think it can be really helpful to use prompts and have guidance, especially when you're first beginning or if you're feeling stuck. YouTube is a perfect example for this, that we can find prompts and small little snippets. I have here on this channel a 30-day mindful art or 5-minute mindful art challenge playlist. So there's 30 videos with a variety of different mindful art activities that you can pop in whenever you want and watch different ones for when you're feeling a little bit stuck and you just want some sort of guidance. So that I find can be really helpful. The other thing I often recommend with our inner critic is to actually name it. I think I've mentioned this once before on the channel as well, that my inner critic I endearingly refer to as critical Chrissy. So there's something, and you can even draw your inner critic or just get it out, write about it on the page. I think there can be something really powerful about having that slight separation, that we recognize it's a part of us, but it's not all of our creativity, and giving just a bit more of that breathing room and space can be really helpful. So really ultimately with this question that Louisa is asking, I feel like the best way that we can move through creative blocks or procrastination or to have a more consistent practice is to do it through small, kind, mindful moments with ourselves and with the art that we're making. And by doing that, the mindful, if this is your first time maybe joining me here on the channel, I interweave mindfulness practices a lot with art, and mindfulness just of coming back to the present moment with as much non-judgmental awareness as possible, kindness to ourselves. And so that's something that that you can keep in mind as well. So I feel like, Louisa, whenever you're watching this on the replay, I just want to say your creative voice matters. All of our creative voices matter. And however we can slowly and gently take these small steps to have more play in our lives, I think is really beautiful and welcomed and so needed in the world. So if you're watching here live or on the replay, feel free to put any comments or questions in the chat. I'm happy to answer them live. And I'm going to move on to a few other questions that were submitted ahead of time to me as well. And so this question comes from Cindy. So hello to, I usually go by Cynthia, but hello to another Cindy out there. So she says, starting is one of my biggest issues. Also, giving myself permission to be free. She says, I'm 67 years old and still living under the tyrant mom rules in my head when it comes to taking care of me. She says, I create as long as someone tells me what to create or I have something to copy. Pulling the rabbit out of my hat is very much a mystery to me. And she says, coming up with ideas is a foreign concept to me. So I love this question. And I'd be curious also for you watching this replay or live, what do you find is the thing that tends to hold you back from your creativity? Is it having too many ideas? Is it not knowing where to start? Is it feeling like an imposter? Is it feeling like you don't have the right supplies or training? So I'd love to hear that in comments if you want to share, and I'll dive into her question here. And so first, I just kind of want to pose the question, what if copying, especially as a beginner, when you're first beginning or exploring a brand new art medium or writing medium, what if copying can be a beginning for you, not a block? And I know that there's that book of like, it's something like Steal Like an Artist, where many times as people are creating, we tend to copy initially looking at different like methods or materials, trying on lots of different ways of creating so we can get a better sense of what feels good to me, what type of paint or marker or pen feels good in my hand. Am I drawn more so to abstract or realism or this type of paper on larger canvases, really small pieces? And so we don't know those things until we actually try them. And it can be really helpful to see who inspires you. I have on Pinterest, I have different boards that I've kind of curated for myself that I have as an inspiration, but that I really have for a lot of my students that you can always check out. There's lots of other things on Pinterest or on YouTube or Instagram, in magazines, that you can look and see what are different colors that people are using, materials, what's the approach, and you can try it on, almost like trying on an outfit. Like if you're going to the store and you're considering what outfit to buy for yourself, you can try it on and just see how that feels to you, how you feel comfortable in that particular skin or outfit that you're putting on. And I think that that's really normal and natural, and especially something we do when we're first beginning or when we're first trying new materials. So I just wanted to say that I think it can be really challenging to think of an idea completely out of the blue, especially when you're first starting. And to just ease some of that pressure off, it can be great to see what else is out there and have different prompts, ideas, suggestions. That's why online classes are also really helpful, but especially just videos here on YouTube as well. So, what if copying is a beautiful beginning and not a block? So, perhaps leaning into that and trusting that the more over time and practice that you explore your particular creativity, the more that you'll start to kind of, it's like I often refer to this in my classes actually as it's like buffet style. You can then pick and choose the things that, feel really good, taste really good to you. And then you'll end up having your own unique visual language and marks that you're making or materials you're using that are specifically unique to you. And then you'll also start having you'll have more comfortability to have your own ideas coming through. Um, so I want to share this as well. I mentioned the 30 Days of Mindful Art playlist that you can watch for different prompts and ideas. I also have a mindful art workbook for self-care that includes a lot of writing prompts for you to identify what are the things that light me up creatively, what am I curious about, what materials might I want to try, so you can start kind of discovering that. So I do have a free workbook. You can download it. I will put it in the chat box, and it's totally optional if you want to opt into my email or not. So I only want you on my email list if you want to connect more with me, and I share lots more tips and videos and articles and discounts, but there's no pressure to do that. So that's totally just a gift for you to tune into more of your creativity and more of your creative voice. So let's see. I want to also move on to this next question, which comes from Schulpa. And if you're watching again live or on the replay, please feel free to comment anything that's resonating with you or any questions that you might have now or later. I can address it on another video as well. So Shilpa asks, she says, if you have any and she wrote kind of a longer email before, but I'll read just this part. She says, if you have any tips on how to get back into your mindful art practice or creativity, I would be very grateful. Thank you so much. So especially if you have had a consistent art practice in the past, or you have had creative expression at some point in the past, and you're feeling like you're in a bit of a rut or kind of a ebb and flow, you're in a down season, you're not creating a lot. Again, that might be because you're really busy or you're distracted or you're feeling resistant or blocked. And you're just in general feeling out of rhythm with your art and with your creativity, which also is your self-care, I believe, because the more we express our creativity, the more we're tending to ourselves also. So if you're experiencing that now or in the past, or if it comes up in the future, I just want to say again, you're not alone. I feel like this is something that as a creative, I think it's a myth that we can feel creatively lit up and in a good rhythm 100% of the time. And that doesn't mean that we don't still show up and try. When I was doing my master's program years ago, one of my professors, I was in a good rhythm. And I remember she said, strike while the iron is hot. We were getting ready to go on our holiday break, and we had 2 weeks off. And she said, strike while the iron is hot, stay in this consistent rhythm of showing up. And I will definitely say there were times when I went to my art studio at the time, and I literally would just show up and I would sit there, or I would flip through some books for ideas, or I would write a couple of things, or I would piddle around with some colors, but I wasn't in a deep dive, in the flow practice for an hour. And that will constantly ebb and flow, I've found, daily, yearly, as part of our creative practice. So I think part of it for me is just coming back to ourselves and acknowledging that and being kind to ourselves first and foremost. And then also finding what is the smallest thing that I can do right now to re-engage with my creativity. And there's also this book that I love that's called A More Beautiful Question. And the author, instead of brainstorming ideas, so let's say you're feeling creatively blocked, instead of writing down ideas of what you could create, what he suggests instead is that you write down questions. So it might be that I begin with, why am I feeling creatively blocked right now? And instead of answering that question, or what should I create right now? Instead of answering that as a brainstorm, I could then say, what's holding me back right now? What is it that I'm wanting to feel when I create? who could I create with? Where could I start creating? Why is my creativity important to me? And you can just start to go through. He suggests actually doing this practice and doing 50 questions, which for me, I found every time I've done it, and I share this sometimes in my online classes and I guide people through. So anytime we've done it, usually by like the 30th question that you get to is where the magic really starts to happen, because initially, it's just kind of things you're thinking of. And then once you get to around 30 questions, it can feel like a stretch to come up with what's that next question. And there's really interesting science to support this as well, that the moment we ask ourselves a question, our subconscious, it's almost like goes to work to answer that question, even when we're not actively thinking about it. So if you've ever like gone out on a walk, or you're in taking a shower, you're driving, and you get this like aha moment of inspiration and insight and ideas, it's very often because there was something that was, you asked a question previously at some point, maybe you were trying to creatively problem solve, and then when you had that space, it's almost like it bubbles back up to the surface. So this is such a fun, like, favorite practice of mine since I discovered it. And so, yeah, so you can do them in separate sessions. You don't have to write all 50 questions at once. But I think you might be surprised how that can help to spark some of your creativity and just help to refocus your awareness on it. So the other thing, so I mentioned this earlier, setting a timer, having a particular ritual or schedule. So if you know that your schedule is super busy, but maybe every morning when you're having tea, you have 10 minutes to yourself, and you can have a small pocket journal that you could doodle on, or you have a 30-minute or 60-minute lunch break at work, and you want to dedicate 5 of those minutes to doodling or to following along with a YouTube mindful art breathing practice. The way that we can sync up that habit with a particular part of our schedule can be really helpful for us to start building our creativity muscle, where it becomes less and less about a chore or decision of even finding the time. And we just know, every day for 5 minutes on our lunch break, or 5 minutes right before I go to bed, I'm going to have this dedicated journal that then I'm writing gratitudes in. I'm doing a breath doodle practice. I'm adding in magazine images, whatever your practice is. And again, you can always look at that 30-day mindful art playlist for ideas and inspiration. And then the other thing, I mentioned walking earlier, but I'm such a big fan as well of connecting in nature, even if it's just a walk. If you can't walk for whatever reason where you live right now, maybe the weather, or you have an injury or something, even just sitting outside or looking outside a window, having moments where you can have a bit of breathing room and connect with nature, I also have found can help to drop into more of a rest and digest space where we can be more creative. So I know it's not directly related, but I always love that one as well. And then the other thing, I actually have another video here on my YouTube channel around how you can make your own art prompt cards using some of your old artwork. So I'll find that video, I'll add it into the video description if you want to check it out. But really, it prompts you on how you can write 3 to 7 word sentences of art prompts. So when you are feeling a little bit stuck or you're not sure what to create, you literally can pull it, like I think Louisa said, I can't pull a rabbit out of a hat. You literally can pull a rabbit out of a hat and have that prompt. And what I love is that it's actually a prompt that you've written. And again, the workbook that I mentioned will help you identify a bit more about what your creative leanings are. So I have that in the chat, but it's in the description as well. It's totally free, and that might be able to help you also spark some ideas for yourself. So the other thing, and this is actually inspired from Julia Cameron, who wrote The Artist's Way, which any of you who've followed me at all on this channel know that I rave about Julia. I read her Artist's Way book, I think initially almost 20 years ago or something, life-changing for me. I used to facilitate groups on it. I tend to still have a small book club with some close girlfriends here locally where we support each other through it. And one thing that Julia Cameron talks about is having an artist date and having specific dedicated time that you might not even be creating art. This is what I love about it, is that actually she kind of refers to it as it's a way to woo your creative self. And so it might be that you're going to a bookstore. It might be that there's a new art gallery show down the street or First Friday in your area. Or you're just, going to some sort of poetry event. So it's things that can feed your creative soul, your creative curiosities, again, without the pressure of output. And I think this is something that I talk a lot specifically about mindful art, is that the focus is on the actual creative process, not on creating a piece of artwork that you're going to hang on a gallery wall or sell, although that's still very valid. But it takes some of that pressure off. And so I love that idea of kind of wooing yourself and your creativity. And I think the other part that it does that I've noticed for me, and when I've shared some of those practices with students, is that it also gives a little bit more space for our creativity, almost like an honoring of the importance of our creative practice and that part of us inside that wants to simply play and be curious and explore something, and that's in and of itself enough that we don't have to produce something, that we don't have to have, the whole phrase of like a means to an end. We don't have to have an end thing that we're shooting for. We simply can enjoy the process of discovery, of piddling around, of exploring and seeing what feels good. And I just think that the more that we can have that permissiveness for ourselves around our creativity, the more that I find it shows up out in the world, that we can be kind to ourselves, that we can have this curious, playful nature. So it's something to consider and kind of play around with. So I'm going to put in the chat box one more time the workbook. If you haven't downloaded it already, there's no charge. You don't have to sign up for my email list if you don't want to, but it has different prompts to help you identify a bit more about your creativity. I am going to do another live here in a couple of weeks, and I'd love your input, your vote, and you can do that in the comment section of if you want the next Q&A call to be about making meaning of your art, sharing art or creativity with kiddos, mandala art, which is creating art in circles, or if you have any other ideas. So if you want to comment one of those 3 ideas or something else, and I will continue. We'll be collecting more questions ahead of time and then here also live on the call. But my hope is just that you have some moments of creative self-care, and I will connect with you all again soon. Okay, ciao.